FPL is officially back this Friday. With all the Premier League teams now finishing their pre-season games, it's time to lock in our Game Week 1 teams. In this video, I'm going to reveal my latest draft. It's worth noting I have made a lot of changes to my previous team. So as always, if you look forward to today's video, make sure you do drop a like, aim for 200 on this video. And of course, make sure you do smash that subscribe button. Enough waffling, let's get into today's video. So first up, as I mentioned, we need to look at preseason in general because a lot of teams finished up their final preseason games yesterday or the day before. And I personally think they are sometimes the most important pieces of information that we can get. It's the last opportunity for managers to play what they want to feature in Game Week 1. And we as FPL managers can basically come to some conclusions based on those games. So I just want to quickly fly through the 9 points that I do have here. However, if you do want a bit more of a deep dive on all of these, I did do an hour-and-a-half live stream yesterday night going into detail on each team, the starting 11s and what I expect from them. So make sure you do check that one out in yesterday's live stream if you want a big deep dive. But this is going to be a quick cover up. So first up at Arsenal, Saliba and Gabriel started at centre-back and both got on the score sheet. They continued what they done last season, and a reminder that even though centre-backs sometimes have low ceilings, these FPL centre-backs for Arsenal are certainly not that. And it makes us think maybe investing in Arsenal centre-backs is the way to go this year. Saka, Havertz and Martinelli as the front three. I still expect Martinelli to be a bit of a rotation risk with Trossard, but I still think for Game Week 1, Havertz is a safe bet as that number 9 with a midfield of Rice, Partey and Odegaard. That could be the midfield we see going into Game Week 1, which will obviously advance Declan Rice into the final third, where he did pick up 2 assists, but of course both of those were from set pieces for Saliba and Gabriel. I personally do not see Gabriel being a rotation risk in the opening game weeks as Calaflori came in at left back. Number 2, Jota got a goal and assist and has really started to keep the conversation of whether he is a better alternative than Mo Salah, who did blank his other teammate, Luis Diaz, getting a brace. A man who hasn't really been spoken about a lot, but definitely is the lead runner to start on that left-hand side of the Liverpool attack. So that is a brilliant differential if you want to go there. But Jota is getting a lot of new owners off the back of last night. Also, Kwanzaa at 4.5 million started another game, and we are expecting him to start in Game Week 1. If you don't want to go to the high price of Trent, 4.5 million is a decent investment, but just be cautious of Liverpool in those opening weeks. A couple of tricky fixtures offensively, but Trent did play 75 minutes and grabbed an assist, so that is going to be a real opportunity for managers to go there at 7 million. Chelsea conceded once again. If you thought about having any defenders or goalkeepers, do not touch them. They are not worth the hassle at all. However, Nkunku and Palmer played 45 minutes in the second half against Inter Milan, and I do think both of those are going to start in Game Week 1, especially Nkunku. He has just looked the best player during pre-season, so I don't think you need to be concerned about Nkunku's minutes. It's just whether you think you want to make the saving of 4 million off Cole Palmer. The big news that has broken the last 8 hours is João Felix looks like he could return to Chelsea off the back of the breakdown of their striker. Obviously, another attacking player who could play in those pockets. Could that impact the minutes of Nkunku and Cole Palmer? I think that could be a risk. But again, if they make the signing, I'm not expecting João Felix to come into that Chelsea team anytime soon. Last few here. Vardiel back at left back, which is really important because if he's playing at centre back for Man City, I don't think we want him really at 6 million. The problem, last season when we saw him bomb down the left-hand side, it's because they played Foden, who inverted into midfield. It looks like with Jack Grealish's injury, Doku could start at left wing, and I don't think that's a great combination for Doku and Vardiel in particular, which is making me think, is Vardiel worth it at 6 million? Bruno played as a false 9 in that Community Shield, grabbing an assist, unlucky not to get that worldy goal. And I do think he's a good option at 8.5, but the fixtures are mixed. Whereas Ahmad had an early substitution and could be a risk for your teams with Garnacho coming on and obviously getting that goal. João Pedro back with a goal for Brighton, 5.5 million. A lot of us forgot about him. For me, with the opening 3 fixtures being very difficult, that's one to monitor, but he is definitely an FPL consideration now. And Minter with another goal. I don't mind managers going there because he has been in electric form during pre-season. And finally, the big one, Dominic Solanke signed for Spurs. We're expecting him to start in game week 1 off the back of the conversations Ange just had in pre-season. It looks like he signs players with the expectation of them hitting the ground running, similar to that of Van der Ven. And I actually really do like Solanke in game week 1 teams. And spoiler alert, he has made it into mine. So that's a little bit of an update on what we're looking at. Let's get into my team selection. So it's worth noting at the time of recording, I am planning on doing a game week 4 wildcard. I've discussed it in previous videos, and I'm going to do a deep dive in tomorrow's video on exactly why I'm planning on doing a game week 4 wildcard. But just as a bit of an overview, it means that I can really target down on Arsenal assets. I think short-term Jota is a better option than Salah, but long-term I prefer Salah. So it gives me the best of both worlds. I can have the punt on Jota, knowing that I can wildcard Mo Salah back into my team around game week 4, knowing that he's a player that I want long-term. With Foden and De Bruyne not really Man City options, I feel like I want Erling Haaland in the opening weeks. And once Foden and De Bruyne are back in game week 4, then we can bring him into the teams on that wildcard. There's a lot of other reasons behind it, which I will touch into, but today is all about the team selection. But make sure you do have in mind, with the players I've selected, I am looking at a 3 game week window, and that is it. So in goal, I'm going for Henderson at 4.5 million. I'm pretty confident on this one. We don't have an update on Mark Guéhi right now. Started the most recent preseason game for Crystal Palace, but we need to remember Glasner done fantastic with his Crystal Palace team defensively last year in his 15 games in charge, and that was without Mark Guéhi because of course he was injured. Henderson now confirmed to be the starter, with Sam Johnson expected to leave the club, hence why I've got Matthews at 4 million as the potential Crystal Palace backup goalkeeper. Henderson for me at 4.5 million. Good long-term fixtures, save potential, and of course with the early wildcard, I'm looking at those early fixtures, and I think Palace have good enough ones to justify not only clean sheets, but maybe those big double-digit returns if he does rack up the saves and then inevitably bonus points. So for that reason, Henderson is in as my 4.5 million goalkeeper. So moving into my defenders, and the first thing you can see here is I've actually spent quite a lot on my defenders. In previous drafts, I've had 2 4 million defenders, I've had 1 6 million and a bunch of 4.5s. With this team, what I saw of Arne Slot's Liverpool, I know I'm jumping the gun right now, but I feel like I want a piece of Trent in those opening 3 game weeks. I know he got an assist from a worldy finish, but I think right now Trent is going to be a brilliant option under Arne Slot from what I saw in that friendly, and I'm a little bit scared to go without him. I know Quansah is 4.5 million, and that is a brilliant piece into that Liverpool defence, but I don't really look at Liverpool and think to myself, I just want a 4.5 million centre-back who has no attacking potential. When I look at Liverpool, I'm seeing goals in pre-season. And for that reason, I think if I go 4.5 million for Quansah, I'm just going to be looking at Trent bagging goals or assists in this Liverpool team thinking I should have just paid the extra and got him into my team while Quansah is picking up 6 pointers each and other week. So Trent is in. I really like him at 7 million, and it means if I have to, I can come down to him early doors if I have made the mistake, but hopefully I haven't with that choice. And surprisingly, I've also gone for a 6 million. Previously, it was Vardial. However, with Doku likely to start left wing, that has me a little bit of reservations on Vardial, whether he's actually going to be that free roaming left back that we saw last season, basically playing as a left winger. If he's a bit more of a default left back, then I think to myself, for 3 game weeks, I'd rather just have a piece of that Arsenal defence. And you'd argue Gabriel maybe has even more attacking potential than that of Vardial, and I prefer the Arsenal fixtures defensively. So Gabriel is in for the first time this pre-season. And I've gone for 2 4.5s in the shape of Robinson, who has been very offensive for Fulham in pre-season. I really do like how he rotates with Hall. And of course, Hall at 4.5. Slight risk, but with the injuries to Newcastle and no signing of Mark Guéhi, I'm expecting Dan Burn to start at centre-back and therefore Lewis Hall at left-back. I think because Trippier hasn't been sold, that is my reason why I'm not going for Livramento, just in case Trippier does rock up in maybe game week 2. I need these players for a little bit more of a longer term than just 1 game week in isolation. And I've currently got Harwood Bellis in the team. I do prefer Barco at 4 million, but there is some rumours that there's a left-back being signed for Brighton, and for that reason, I'd rather just go for the man that I know is definitely going to feature week in, week out for Southampton, in case we have an injury in this team and I need to fall back on him. I don't think Barco is justifying himself enough for me to go for him over Harwood Bellis with those potential rumours. So that is the defence. I'm really happy to have those premiums in the shape of Trent and Gabriel, but of course Vardial is still on my mind. So take a look at the midfield, and it's worth noting this is probably the most uncertain I am right now with the whole team. So please do give me a break. I am going to say this team could change between now and Friday. I'm just going to have to put it out there because I still think there are so many fantastic midfield options in the game that I do think it's very rare for FPL managers to be 100% set on the 5 midfielders that they are going for. But the big news right now that you can see is no Mo Salah in this team. You could check out yesterday's live stream where I discussed about doing a Salah and Haaland draft, but I just couldn't come to the conclusion that having both of those in my team is the best use of the money. So I am deciding to go without Mo Salah, and my logic for that is this. I look at Liverpool right now, and with Diogo Jota at 7.5 million playing as a number 9, I think that's a good enough alternative to Mo Salah in the opening 3 game weeks. Remember, I'm not looking at a long-term player. I'm only looking at a player that can play for 3 game weeks. And with Darwin Núñez and Gakpo looking a little bit off the pace, I'm fully expecting Diogo Jota to get considerable minutes in those opening 3 game weeks, with me planning to wildcard in game week 4, and then I can completely reassess, and if Mo Salah hits the ground running, he comes into the team. Whereas at Man City, I look at Erling Haaland with no Foden. De Bruyne really isn't a consideration. I don't think people are confident in Doku, Savio, and I know Oscar Bob is in this team right now, but can I sit here right now and confidently say to you I think Bob could match Haaland? I think the answer is no. So that is why I'm currently leaning towards, spoiler alert, an Erling Haaland draft, because I don't see any alternatives to that Man City team, whereas I think Jota could match Mo Salah or at least get close to him at 5 million cheaper. So Diogo Jota is in for those brilliant fixtures: Ipswich away, Brentford at home, Man United away. I'd even argue is a goal scoring fixture, so I don't mind that one. Eze is in right now at 7 million. Now, I spoke about how I'm a little bit concerned about owning him because with Glasner, what we saw last season is a Mateta who was basically playing like Thierry Henry, and Elise who we know is going to inevitably be a world-class player. So with both of those out of the team for game week 1 most likely, are we going to see a subdued Crystal Palace team? And I still haven't come to the conclusion of that, but what I do know is this. If Eze does remain at Crystal Palace, he will be the talisman. And if they are going to pick up positive results, he will be at the heart of everything, being on all set pieces and being the main man, instrumental in those attacking phases. So I'm hoping Eze does live up to that 7 million price point. I think Martinelli and Rashford probably are slightly too risky to go for them over someone like an Eze, whose minutes are pretty guaranteed, as long as he doesn't get a deadline move to Man City, is worth noting. The big reason why I am not 100% sure in this draft is the inclusion of Martin Odegaard. Now, with Bukayo Saka back at Arsenal, he's played half against Leverkusen, he played 77 in yesterday's game. I think Saka is obviously the better pick in this Arsenal team. And I've been trying to convince myself during pre-season that Odegaard could match Bukayo Saka. And for someone like me who's looking at only 3 game weeks, I could definitely get lucky. Go for Odegaard and he actually does outscore Bukayo Saka in those 3. If I'm looking at a 10 game week period, I'm almost certain Saka comfortably outscores Odegaard. But because I'm looking at a smaller time frame, I know Odegaard has played the majority of the minutes in pre-season. We know in these home games against smaller teams, he can step up. And I think Odegaard is a good alternative to Saka. But right now, I want Bukayo Saka, and that is why I'm a little bit hesitant on this midfield. In Nkunku at 6.5, I've seen enough in pre-season to know that he is the best 6.5 million, and I do prefer him over Cole Palmer. I just think he is unbelievably underpriced. I am that bullish on him, but the signing of João Pedro could change things longer term, hence why a wildcard in game week 4 could resolve those issues. And finally, Oscar Bob, 5 million. He is going to be my choice. We've spoken about Rodgers, who I said I like him over a 10 game week period. But for the opening 3, I think the potential of Oscar Bob is way more than that of Rodgers. And Amad Diallo at Man United is also a fantastic pick. With my strategy, I actually could look at Amad Diallo and say to myself, I need him for game week 1 at home against Fulham, and then I can happily bench him in the following game weeks. But Oscar Bob, for me, with the injury to Jack Grealish removing another competition for places for him, I think he starts in game week 1. And if you can get him for game week 2 at home against Ipswich, I feel like it's a differential that's too hard to ignore right now. So that is the midfield. We'll come on to the forwards now, but as I said, there's a few deliberations with this midfield that I still need to decide on. So finally, we have the forwards, and Alexander Isak has been in every single one of my drafts. I watched the highlights of the Newcastle recent friendly, and Isak was incredible. So there's no way Alexander Isak is coming out of this team. I've seen enough in preseason and last year to know that this guy is essential in pretty much all of our FPL teams. Erling Haaland is in, as I mentioned. I don't feel comfortable going without both Salah and Erling Haaland, so it has to be one of them. And currently, I'm leaning towards the Erling Haaland draft. I just know I'm getting guaranteed minutes from him. I know exactly what I'm getting from Haaland. And Ipswich at home in game week 2 just feels like a fixture where it could be triple captain territory if you wanted to truly go there. So Haaland is in, and I'm pretty confident that I will be starting this season with him. I'm very scared to go without him. But finally, this is the big deliberation for me right now. I have upgraded my Fulham spot of Muniz at 6 million all the way to Dominic Solanke at 7.5 million. Of course, ignore the Bournemouth top. He has been confirmed as a Spurs player. And with the opening fixtures away against Leicester, who have been horrendous in pre-season, it's worth noting, and a home game against Everton. Remember, I'm only looking at a 3-game week period. Newcastle away in game week 3 isn't ideal, but could Spurs cause problems for Newcastle? Absolutely. So I'm trying to justify right now whether Solanke is worth the 1.5 million extra than that of a Muniz, a Chris Wood, or even a 2 million more than a João Pedro. Right now I do think it is, because I've always wanted a piece of the Spurs attack, especially for somebody like me who is on an early wildcard. I haven't been able to squeeze Son in. Kulusevski I had question marks about. Solanke, 7.5 million, playing as a number 9 in this Spurs team with Leicester away and Everton at home, I think is too good to pass up on. And as I mentioned, especially some for me who is going to wildcard in game week 4. So I've gone for Solanke, but it is worth noting that 1.5 million extra that is being invested in there, of course, was the sacrifice that I made with Saka down to Odegaard. So there is a world where I could go Odegaard to Saka and downgrade Solanke all the way to a Muniz at Fulham, which I do not mind at all. So that is a little bit of a deliberation that I need to make with my team. But that is how we're looking going into game week 1. Let me know your thoughts on the team. I'm going to show you now how it looks as a starting 11 for game week 1 and how it progresses through to game week 3, because that is obviously the time horizon that I am considering. So taking a look at how my team would look between game weeks 1 and game week 3, just wanted to give you a little bit of a visual here, because I think it is worth noting how players would rotate in each and every game week. Because sometimes when you build a team, you realise a player that you selected doesn't actually come into your team until game weeks 3 or 4, and then you start asking the question, is that player actually worth it in your side? Now, first and foremost, I need to say this. If you haven't got the Fantasy Football Fix Google Chrome extension, you're playing the game wrong. This is integrated in the official site. The Google Chrome extension, which is totally free, is called FPL Plus. Make sure you do check it out. All you need is a free Fantasy Football Fix account, which takes 2 seconds to set up. And you get this planning tool and the price changes integrated with the official site. Don't have to worry about third-party sites. It is a no-brainer, something that I use literally daily. So this is how the team is looking going into game week 1. And as you can see, it is pretty strong in all departments. We are taking the punt on Oscar Bob starting away against Chelsea. But what I saw with Chelsea, they are all over the shop defensively. And it does mean benching someone like a Christopher Nkunku. But of course, if we had a little bit of a hesitancy about Oscar Bob starting, then Nkunku could easily come into this side, and we just hope that he does put on a display against Man City. But the rest of the team looks good. Remember, Solanke would be in a Spurs kit away against Leicester, which would look really, really appealing. And the captaincy, as of right now, would be on Alexander Isak. I know Chelsea have been all over the shop, but I do think Isak at home against Southampton is better than that of Erling Haaland away against Chelsea. If I had Mo Salah, I would be tempted to go there, but having Diogo Jota, I would much rather have Alexander Isak, who is guaranteed to be on penalties with that home game against Southampton. Now, moving into game week 2, to give you a bit of an idea here, you can see the team here. Now, the big issue that I do have is that having Christopher Nkunku in my side, I look at my starting 11 and ask myself, who does he actually come in for in game week 2? So obviously the defence picks itself here, although it is worth noting Robinson definitely would be a consideration for this team, and maybe even Robinson coming in for Gabriel, which could be a little bit controversial, or Robinson coming in for a Lewis Hall there. That is also a deliberation we would need to make. But the team itself looks strong. Odegaard away against Villa isn't ideal, and maybe that is where I made the sacrifice in game week 2, bringing Christopher Nkunku in for Odegaard. But obviously, the natural sacrifice would be Oscar Bob if we had concerns of him not starting against Ipswich at home. But I really would wish he starts that game because that could be the money fixture for him. But the rest of the team looks really, really strong. Solanke, of course, would have Everton at home. And in terms of captaincy, of course, Erling Haaland would take the captaincy at home against Ipswich. So again, with the wildcard 4 strategy, I'm looking to roll my transfer every single week before it. And with this team, you can see there is no reason to make a transfer. So now coming into game week 3, you can see a couple of problems that do emerge with this team. So Henderson hasn't got a great game away against Chelsea, but again, if he is going to rack up a double-digit haul, it's these sort of games where they accumulate saves. So it's not the worst thing in the world. Gabriel Robinson and Trent Alexander-Arnold, again, not ideal fixtures for Trent, but he can definitely rack up those attacking returns against any team I would expect. Now, when we look at the midfield, Nkunku would definitely have his moment to shine in this team. So I'll be looking to bring him in for the likes of Bob, Eze or Diogo Jota, and that would be decided based on the minutes that those three will be getting in the opening game weeks. My first assumption would be probably Oscar Bob is naturally going to be a bit of an issue come that game week. And Solanke, remember, isn't going to be in this kit. He would have Newcastle away in this game, which isn't ideal. But I am hoping by this time we have seen a free-scored Spurs team who can put it against any team. So that's how the team would look for those opening 3 game weeks. Captaincy was most likely going Erling Haaland once again against West Ham. But it's worth noting they have recruited very, very well during the summer. So it could be quite a defensively sound West Ham team that we need to reassess come game week 3. But that's how the team's looking. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And remember, the deadline is only this Friday. Yes, guys, okay, so that's going to wrap up today's Game Week 1 team selection. As I mentioned, this is my latest team. There will be a final team selection later on this week where I'm going to have full clarification once we've had the press conferences and hopefully a few more transfers which can help us decide on particular players. But I feel like I am getting closer and closer to my final team. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure you drop a like and of course smash that subscribe button for daily fantasy content. If you want additional content, make sure you check out the links in my bio to Patreon and the YouTube membership. Don't want to be missing out on that. And if you have any further questions, please do put them in the comment section. Have an amazing day and I'll see you real soon. Take care. Cheers.